Have you ever been so focused on reaching the next goal that you didn't realize you had already crossed one of the finish lines that you had always dreamed of? You may have kept working, kept moving, and kept adding the next thing without ever really stopping to notice what you had already accomplished. Somewhere along the way, the goal quietly became a moving target. I don't think the problem is that we work too hard. I think the problem is we can become so accustomed to working towards the next thing that we forget why we were working so hard in the first place. Hi, I'm Jasmin Braithwaite, a certified hypnotherapist, and today I want to talk about what can happen when the mind becomes so accustomed to striving that it stops fully registering arrival, satisfaction, and even the life that all of that effort was supposed to create. Imagine running a race. You train for it, you prepare, you push yourself, and you keep going even when you're tired. Then you cross that finish line. But instead of taking your victory lap, catching your breath, and appreciating what you had just accomplished, you immediately register and sign up for that next race. You're already thinking about what comes next. At some point, you forget that the finishing was ever supposed to feel satisfying. That can happen in life too. You reach one goal, and almost immediately, another one takes its place. Maybe you earn a degree and begin thinking about the next certification. You get the promotion, but your attention shifts to the next role. You reach the financial milestone, and before long, the new number starts to feel insufficient too. After a while, the finish line moves so often that you may stop noticing when you've actually arrived somewhere meaningful. That's what that's when I think it becomes worth asking what all of this hard work was supposed to be to make possible. Maybe you were working towards more freedom or a greater sense of security. Perhaps you wanted more time, more peace, or enough room in your life for love, family, travel, and creativity. You may have simply wanted to enjoy life more once you reach that certain point. But sometimes the mind becomes trained to search for the next target so quickly that it doesn't pause long enough to register completion. And when that response becomes automatic, you can keep achieving while still feeling as though you're falling behind. One reason this can be difficult to notice is that the mind adapts so quickly. Something that once felt exciting can gradually become normal. A goal that once represented success can start to feel like the new baseline. The degree becomes something you believe you should have, and you should have earned it by now. The promotion begins to feel expected. The income level you once hoped for becomes the minimum amount you now think you need. Once that shift happens, the mind may stop treating the achievement as evidence that you've progressed. It starts treating it as the new starting point. That's one of the reasons someone can accomplish something very significant and still feel almost no real sense of arrival. Their attention has already moved on. The mind begins scanning for the next problem, the next gap, or whatever still needs to be completed. Over time, that can become an automatic habit of attention. You become so practiced at noticing what's missing that you barely register what's already present. And this can show up in almost every part of life. You reach a savings goal, but instead of feeling secure, you immediately decide the number needs to be higher. You complete one certification and begin comparing yourself to someone who has several. You improve your home, grow your business, strengthen a relationship, or reach an age you once thought would feel significant, and somehow the goal shifts again. There's always another comparison available. Someone else is doing more. A new technology appears. Another trend starts gaining attention. A new skill suddenly feels essential. Some of that pressure is real. I don't want to pretend here. The world does change, industries evolve, and sometimes learning more or adapting is really necessary. But when everything feels urgent, it becomes much harder to stop and ask whether every opportunity actually deserves your time, money, and attention. That's when people can start making decisions from momentum. They don't always choose the next goal because they've carefully thought it through and decided that it actually supports the life they want. Sometimes they choose it because moving forward has become an automatic response. And the next step may not even make practical sense. Someone may enroll in another program without fully calculating the cost. They may pursue a new business idea without considering whether they have the time or financial capacity to support it. They may keep expanding their lifestyle even though the added expenses are creating more pressure than enjoyment. At that point, the pursuit of more can begin consuming the very freedom, security, or peace that the original goals were supposed to create. So it helps to pause and ask yourself a few direct questions. Yes, I may be capable of doing more, but do I actually want what doing more will require? And if I keep moving the finish line, when will anything I ever achieve ever have the chance to feel like it's enough? Those questions may lead you towards the next goal with even greater confidence. Or they may help you recognize that you've already achieved and reached a level of success that deserves to be acknowledged, experienced, and enjoyed, celebrated. Either way, you deserve enough space to find out. This is where the subconscious mind becomes an important part of the conversation. When the same mental and emotional response happens often enough, the mind can begin to treat it as familiar and build a habit. You achieve something, and almost immediately, your attention moves to what's next. You notice the remaining gap, create another target, and begin the process all over again. After a while, you may no longer need to consciously tell yourself to keep striving because your attention and automatic habits already know where to go. It looks for what hasn't been completed yet, notices what someone else has that you don't, and it begins identifying the next skill, the next title, the next financial goal, the next purchase, or accomplishment that might help you feel more secure, which never usually happens, by the way. Because that process happens so quickly, you may not realize that your mind has skipped over an important stage. You haven't really taken in what has happened. You haven't allowed yourself to feel proud or given yourself or your nervous system much opportunity to experience completion before preparing for the next demand. That doesn't mean you need to spend months celebrating every accomplishment, although it might not hurt. It simply means the mind needs some chances to recognize that you did something meaningful, that progress happened, and that you're no longer standing where you once stood on day one. And without that recognition, the mind can keep responding as though the original need was never meant and that you're not a success. You may have pursued a degree because you wanted security, only to earn it and still feel insecure. You may have wanted a promotion because you believed it would create more freedom, but the new role brings more responsibility and even less free time. The same thing can happen with money. You increase your income because you want more peace, but your expenses, expectations, or lifestyle increase right along with it. And that can create a cycle in which external goals keep changing while the internal experience remains almost exactly the same. The mind learns through repetition. If you repeatedly reach a goal and immediately redirect your attention towards what's still missing, that response can become familiar and habitual. Over time, striving may begin to feel more natural than arrival and achievement. You may become highly practiced at preparing, producing, improving, and anticipating what comes next, while feeling far less comfortable pausing long enough to experience satisfaction. That's when the subconscious mind and the habits underneath achievement become worth examining. What has accomplishment come to represent for you? What does it feel like? What does success mean to you? Maybe it represents security or approval. It may feel connected to being capable, worthy, respected, or free. And what does your mind expect might happen if you stop pushing for a while? Those questions matter because the next achievement may be carrying an emotional responsibility it can't actually fulfill. You may be expecting another degree, promotion, income level, or business milestone to finally create a feeling of safety or completion. But if your attention has already been trained to search for the next gap, that feeling may remain out of reach even after the goal is achieved 10 times over. Hypnosis works with focused attention, mental imagery, suggestion, and rehearsal. In that focused state, a person can begin noticing beliefs and automatic responses that usually move too quickly to examine. They can mentally practice reaching a goal and pausing long enough to recognize it. They can rehearse acknowledging progress before deciding what comes next. They can also begin imagining what would it feel like to pursue ambition from a place of clarity instead of constantly trying to quiet an internal sense of insufficiency. The purpose of that pause is to help you make a more conscious decision. Do you genuinely want that next race? Or do you have to simply become accustomed to registering for one? Once you begin asking that question, the conversation naturally expands beyond achievement itself. Every new goal asks something from your life. It may require more time, money, or energy. It may ask you for your attention in a way that leaves less of you available for everything else in life. And those resources have to come from somewhere. That's why your calendar can reveal so much. You may say that family matters deeply to you, while your schedule leaves almost no room for real connection. You may care about your health, but every available hour is already committed to work, caregiving, errands, or recovering from exhaustion. You may want more peace or creativity in your life. Maybe you want more time for friendship, spirituality, travel, or simply being outside. But if your life is still organized almost entirely around productivity, those parts of you may keep getting pushed to the side. That doesn't mean your priorities are wrong. Your current schedule may simply still reflect an earlier season of your life. There may have been a time when earning the degree had to come first, building the career, creating the financial stability, or proving to yourself that you are capable may have needed most of your attention. The question is whether that same arrangement still makes sense in the present moment. Sometimes the next meaningful goal is professional or financial, and sometimes the next goal is to experience more of the life your earlier achievements were supposed to make possible. That may mean booking that cruise or finally having that spa day. It might mean more nature walks, returning to a hobby you love, or spending time with people you love without feeling rushed. It could also mean allowing a relationship to receive more energy than just your leftovers at the end of the week. Not to mention all of us out there who have pets that don't get all the pets and the love and the attention that they could be getting. There's a signature storyline in many of the Hallmark TV channel movies, if for those of you who have watched them, where someone leaves their small town home because they want more out of life. They want to experience the big city, the metropolitan area, and they build a successful career in a metropolitan city. And years later, they return home for a random visit. And while they're there, they reconnect with the people in the community and they usually run into a former love, often their high school sweetheart. And for those who have seen these stories, you know the script pretty well. As the story unfolds, they begin to recognize that some of the connection, support, and sense of belonging they had been searching for in the big city had been back home all along. They realized that the bigger career and the bigger dream didn't automatically outweigh the value of the real relationships and community they had known growing up. The big dream wasn't necessarily wrong. It may have been meaningful, exciting, and worth pursuing, but it became so dominant that they lost sight of what already had true value in their lives. And that's the part of the story that connects to this conversation. People can become so focused on pursuing more that they lose sight of what the pursuit was meant to create and still have very little time to enjoy the money. You can build a respected career while becoming more disconnected from the people that you had hoped the career would help support. You can become extremely capable at managing responsibilities and gradually lose touch with pleasure, spontaneity, and love. And love includes much more than romance. It shows up in friendship and family. It can be found in community, care, and the ability to be present with someone without mentally reviewing everything you still need to do. These parts of life can slowly diminish without one dramatic moment announcing that something has changed. That's why it can be that's why it can be useful to look at a typical week almost like a budget. How much of your week goes towards work, commuting, household responsibilities, or caregiving? How much space is left for sleep, health, relationships, spiritual life, recreation, learning, or simple enjoyment? The goal isn't to divide every category equally. Different seasons of life require different amounts of time and attention. The point is to look clearly at whether the way you're spending your life still reflects what you believe your life is for. Once you can see where your time, energy, and attention are going, the next step is deciding whether that allocation still makes sense. That doesn't always require a dramatic change. Sometimes what you need is a clear plan. If a new skill is genuinely necessary for your career, you can decide when and how you're going to learn it instead of carrying the pressure around the back of your mind all day. If you're considering another degree or certification, you can look at the cost, the time commitment, and what you realistically expect it to make possible before you commit. I'll use myself as an example, if I may. I've earned several certifications over the years because they genuinely mattered to me. I became a certified hypnotherapist. I also earned my project management professional PMP certification, which requires continuing education to maintain it every 2 years. I became a certified natural health professional as well, and that was a passion of mine and still is. All these things are passion of mine. And that certified natural health professional certification involved traveling to different parts of the country over a series of several months to take the required classes in person. So the investment wasn't only mental, it required time, travel, money, planning, and rearranging my schedule around the program. And if you've ever gone to school while working or managing the rest of your life, you know how demanding that can get. Your brain is constantly taking in new information while you're still trying to show up for everything else. I always use the analogy you're swapping out the engine while you're still flying the plane in the air. You're studying, completing assignments, preparing for classes or webinars, and finding ways to fit all of that into an already full life. Sometimes it can feel like your mind is doing Olympic level work. I don't regret those accomplishments. They were meaningful to me. But they also remind me that every new credential asks something from your life. And when the target keeps moving, continually striving can become mentally exhausting. The same kind of pause can be helpful when you're thinking about growing a business. Before investing more money, taking on more debt, or adding another responsibility to an already full schedule, It helps to think through the financial plan and what the next stage will actually require. Clarity makes a difference because vague pressure can make everything feel pretty urgent. A plan helps you separate what matters now from what can wait. It can also give you permission to recognize that some goals may no longer belong to you. A goal may have made perfect sense 5 years ago and no longer fit your current lifestyle. You may still be carrying an old definition of success that was shaped by comparison, family expectations, fear, or the need to prove something. Sometimes a goal has already served its purpose. You may have wanted the title because it represented credibility. The income may have represented security, or the degree may have represented opportunity. Once those needs have been met, it's worth asking whether continuing in that same direction will create more of the life you want or simply more of the same pressure. That's why pausing can be so useful. A pause gives you room to distinguish between a goal that still feels meaningful and one that has become an automatic habit. It gives you a chance to ask whether the next step is financially sound, emotionally stable, and realistic alongside your relationships, your health, and your current responsibilities. And after looking at everything clearly, you may decide to keep going. The next race may truly matter to you. You may want the promotion, the business, the degree, the income, or the larger goal. The difference is that you're choosing it with awareness. You know what it will require, what you're willing to give, and why the goal matters to you. Other times, you may realize that what you need most is to regain your center. That might mean reducing the pressure to constantly improve or allowing one area of your life to be good enough while you give more attention to another. It may mean creating more room for love, health, travel, creativity, rest, or simple joy. Regaining your center doesn't mean becoming less capable. It means making sure your capability is still serving your life. One of the ways hypnotherapy can help with this is by giving the mind a chance to experience something it may not have practiced very often: completion. Not just reaching a goal, but actually registering that the goal was reached. In everyday life, we're already using mental imagery all the time, even when we don't consciously think of it as a visualization. We picture what still needs to be done. We imagine the next deadline, the next responsibility, or the next goal that's waiting for us. We may even rehearse the thought, I have to keep going, I have to keep going, I have to keep going, so often that it becomes a familiar mental habit. Over time, the mind can become very practiced at visualizing effort, pressure, and the next target. Hypnosis gives you an opportunity to slow that process down and begin rehearsing something different. Instead of automatically picturing yourself moving towards another goal, you can imagine yourself completing one and allowing that sense of accomplishment to settle in. You can practice noticing the satisfaction, the relief, or pride that may be present before deciding what comes next. A person can be very skilled at mentally rehearsing the work required to get to the next level. They can picture themselves studying, preparing, performing, solving problems, and pushing through difficulty. What they may not have practiced is what happens after they arrive. They may not have imagined themselves pausing, taking in the moment, and allowing the achievement to become part of how they see themselves. Through focused attention and guided imagery, someone can begin rehearsing that experience more intentionally. You might imagine yourself crossing a finish line and this time actually stopping. You notice that the race is over. You allow yourself to breathe. You look back and recognize the distance you've covered. Then you begin thinking about an earlier version of yourself. Maybe it's the version of you who was hoping to become independent, find meaningful work, create stability, build a home, or finally feel capable of managing your own life? What would that version of you notice about where you are now and who you are now? What would they be relieved to know? What would they be proud that you figured out? What kind of reflection can help the mind register progress in a more complete way? It can also create enough space for you to decide what comes next without immediately reacting to pressure that you've built out of habit that might not really even exist. You may realize there's another goal you genuinely want to pursue. You may also realize that the next chapter needs to include more enjoyment, more connection, or time to experience what you've already built. Future pacing during hypnosis can be useful here because it allows you to mentally try on different versions of that next chapter. You can imagine continuing towards a larger goal and notice what that path would ask of you. Then you can imagine making more room for relationships, health, creativity, travel, or rest, and notice what changes in that version of your life. The point isn't to force one answer, it's to give your attention enough room and space to consider more than the next automatic target. You're allowing yourself some space to ask what success means now, based on the life you're living today. Sometimes that question leads to a new ambition. Other times, it helps you recognize that you've already crossed a finish line that deserves far more acknowledgement and credit than you give it. When you look at your life from this perspective, you may realize that success hasn't necessarily been absent. You may have simply become more practiced and built a habit at noticing what's next rather than recognizing what's already here. That's why it can be helpful to pause before automatically choosing your next goal. You can ask yourself whether the next step still reflects something genuine that you want, or whether it has become part of a familiar habit of always reaching for more. The answer may be that you still want a larger career, and that's okay. The higher income, you might still want that, and that's okay. The new business or the next personal challenge. It's okay if you decide that you want those things. There may be something ahead of you that feels meaningful enough to deserve your effort. But you may also recognize that you've already built some of this security, freedom, or opportunity you had once hoped for, and the next chapter needs to include more time to experience joy and just experience what you've built. From a hypnotherapy perspective, this is partly about helping your attention slow down long enough to notice what you've already accomplished. If the mind has become accustomed to searching for the next gap, focused attention can help you begin noticing completion too. Through guided imagery, suggestions, and mental rehearsal, you can practice seeing yourself accomplish something and allowing yourself to feel good about it before your attention moves forward again. You can also begin imagining a future in which ambition and joy are both present. You can continue learning and growing where it makes sense, while giving more time to your health, your relationships, and the other experiences that make your life feel meaningful. The balance may look different for everyone. The important thing is that your next chapter is being shaped by a conscious decision rather than by the automatic assumption that you always need to do more. So perhaps the question isn't only what should I accomplish next? It may also be worth asking, what have I already accomplished that I haven't fully allowed myself to celebrate? Maybe there's another finish line ahead of you. And maybe there's one you've crossed years ago that still deserves to be acknowledged. If you found value in today's conversation, please consider liking the video and subscribing to the channel. I share weekly content on hypnosis, personal growth, and practical ways to create meaningful change. Thanks for spending this time with me, and I'll see you in the next episode.